Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
Here we are. We're back and we're more bended over than ever. Mike and Mike still feeling the pain just watching that on our screen and still marveling at how many angles of it we have.
We have a lot in slow-mo as well.
It's like the Zapruder film was sitting here watching what happened to Gary Sanchez last night, taking one of the family jewels.
Took a foul ball right there, and we've got every angle. We got slow motion. And, how's he feeling this morning? That's what I want to know.
I mean, I'm feeling bad just watching it, so I can't imagine how bad he must feel. We have more angles on that thing than they're going to have if there's a goal line play to decide the Super Bowl, where they have like 400 cameras sitting there just at the – we have more looks at that. It's just remarkable to me. Anyway, we are presented by Progressive Insurance.
You know what we needed, though, that we didn't have? The cup cam.
I don't even know how to play off that. Our guests normally appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Right now, Will Cain has made his way into our studio, as he does every single Wednesday morning. And he, like all the rest of us, are just sort of, I was about to use the word shriveling in pain, and that's probably not the right way to describe it, although it may be the most accurate description I can imagine.
Of a dull sense.
That's one just awful moment, isn't it? There's not a man in the world who's not watching that and going, oh, my goodness, that's just win or lose the game. That's the worst moment of the night.
When's the last time you identified with something similar to that situation?
I've told the story. My nephew, who is now a freshman in college, was young enough that he was visiting us, and we were out throwing a baseball around, and he was maybe 11 years old, and he wanted to pitch. He wanted to, so we marched off a little area, and we were by a pool, so I'm just wearing nothing but a bathing suit, and I get down into a crouch,
that's
and he short hops me.
Yeah, the underneath.
And I went flat on my back,
the
and
underneath.
That was brutal. So that's probably 7-8 years ago now, something like that.
And like I said, they always told us in football, if you get hit there, don't grab a different part of your body.
Why? I don't understand the why.
Don't grab another.
No, grab another. If you're on TV, don't make it. You don't want to be rolling around, holding your junk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they said grab your shoulder.
Really?
But try and do that. You just got pulverized. You're feeling that, and they say grab another part of your body. I mean, that's difficult to do.
Of all the things the NFL focuses on, they gave you guys instructions on how to look appropriate when hit in the nuts.
It's not like in the NFL manual, it's not like that. It's like kind of
the wisdom that's passed down from generation to generation.
I was actually first told this in college, when I was at Notre Dame, quite honestly, and I was told that after I saw a guy get kicked there and run off the field with both hands, holding himself, running off the field on national TV.
Really quickly, as the father of 2 young boys, I can tell you that this has happened within the last 2 weeks.
To you?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, when you have, waist-high individuals inside your house, not only that, like the 6-year-old thought it was funny last week.
Yeah, see, that's
He took a shot because he just thought it would be a good time. It wasn't for anyone.
No, that's the time when, a grounding is certainly. That kid in my house wouldn't see his phone again until next year.
He wouldn't be driving until 20.
All right. The talk show host clock in my head has gone off and said, move to a different topic. Let's get to some Straight Talk with Will Cain. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. And Will, one of the things we were just saying is that of the many things that you would describe, I guess, as your mission statement when you host a show like this, which would primarily include, trying to create interesting thought-provoking conversation, a diverse opinion and humor. One that we probably do less often than the others is actually teach you something about sports. But I think we just did that. I think we all learned something from David Ross there, the inside of this mentality of the way pitchers are pitching now, and why obviously last night being a ridiculous outlier when one starter only goes 1/3 of an inning. But that by and large, the way they are going out there, the mentality they're taking out to the mound, the game plan they're taking out to the mound dictates there's no pretense here that we're going to try and go more than twice through the order. So they're throwing everything they have in their arsenal in the very first at bat in the very first inning of the game. Again, last night being notwithstanding. And it really has changed it. It makes you wonder about paying a starting pitcher $30 million a year. I mean, Zach Greinke is getting paid $34 million to pitch this season. He's the only Diamondback getting paid more than $10 million. Mike, I'll start with you. Can you justify that if in a game that tonight is for your season, a winner-take-all, this for all intents and purposes is Game 7, if no one is going out there with the mentality that he's going to pitch you into the 8th inning?
Listen, it's not about justifying. It's about where we are. That's what the market bears right now. It's not like it's going to go down, but I get what you're saying.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, will it go down? Will teams stop paying that for starting pitchers?
Yeah.
Well, no. Well, I mean, all it takes is teams saying, I'm not going to invest that much in a starting pitcher at this point.
So now you're hoping an owner. I remember in hockey when all the owners were upset because a couple teams were paying a lot, and then when they got their chance, they pay a lot. You can't stop them.
Yeah.
They're going to pay somebody, especially when multiple teams want one guy who is great. So that money is not going to go down, but the mentality seems to have changed. And, Will, it can't be just from the pitcher because catchers call games, whether they're calling it or they're looking over and they're getting the sign from the manager. It seems to be the prevalent attitude now of get me to the fifth inning and we'll take it from there.
That's fascinating. And Greeny's stats that came from David Ross, the pitchers used to think they could get through the lineup 3 times, the statistics say. That third time you're not making it anyway. So give it everything you've got in the first 2 times through the lineup is amazing. I don't know if you're right, Goilc. I think you probably are in the short term that it won't depress the starting pitchers market. We'll find out soon. I mean, what is Yu Darvish is probably the top line starting pitcher to hit free agency this offseason. Will it depress his value?
When's Kluber up?
Probably not.
I mean, Kluber's got a while yet, okay, because he's going to be one as well. But you're right.
But if you're giving more money to middle relievers, if middle relievers have become more important because they're getting you through more innings, you're going to devote more resources there. And you would think by the same token, if starters are giving you fewer, you'll start paying less. That might be a model for the future.
I remember sitting years ago, I had the opportunity to sit next to Theo Epstein at a ball game. I have some friends, and we went to say hello to him, and he wound up inviting us to sit during a Cubs game back when they were terrible. I mean, when the Cubs were in that building process. And it was just an afternoon game at Wrigley Field. And he was telling me one of his concerns about the sport then, this has got to be 5 years ago, was every team is now building up their bullpens. Yeah. They've done it. They won a World Series doing it. I mean, he did it because this is how you win in the sport now. But if every team has 5 guys in the bullpen and can throw 100, you are going to get exactly what you have in baseball right now, which is everybody either hitting home runs or striking out. You have no balls in play. You're not going to have anywhere near the volume of offense late in games that you used to have. And it makes the whole thing just a little bit less exciting if fans want to see more offense and certainly more diverse and varied offense. And that's exactly where we are in the game of baseball right now.
But the game last night didn't play out in the way you would expect if a pitcher was giving his best stuff right off the bat.
Right. Well, then every now and again,
there wasn't
his
best stuff.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you got a 23-year-old kid who had never made a postseason start at any level of baseball in his life, and he went out there last night and just didn't have it at all.
He didn't, but man, and you brought it up, and you can almost point to, okay, he's a 23-year-old kid who's been throwing great. Don't get me wrong, but Santana's a vet. Santana only went 2 innings. I mean, Santana had a 3-0 lead. You know, so
if that game is still 3-0 in the 4th inning, the energy in that place is so totally different. The fact that it got back to 3-3 like that.
But how surprised were you?
The Yankees never had to play that game from behind.
It's easy for me to come back the next morning and say this with no proof whatsoever. However, as I guess a tortured, somewhat Texas Rangers fan, when the Twins went up 3-0, I thought, watch the bottom of the first. Watch the Yankees swing back hard the other way.
I was a little surprised it happened right away. I wouldn't have been surprised if it happened over the course of the game. And to Greeny's point, if it's all of a sudden it's a 3rd, 4th inning and it's still 3-0 or 3-1.
Now you're squeezing the sawdust out of that bat. I think it changes the whole. All these young Yankees who've never been there before,
especially for a veteran pitcher like that he gave it all back in that inning.
A little Twitter reaction. Rob tweets, "You pay the money for the starters in the regular season. In the postseason, the bullpens are more important." Tracy tweets, "They do exit." And this is it's Tracy. And she's a woman. Her photo is a woman. And I just find it interesting. They do exit velocity on home runs. Can we get an exit velocity on that foul tip to the Jewels? That's from Tracy.
That's fair.
Exit velocity is exactly the word we'd use. And then Dennis tweets, "I just saw the Sanchez video. It actually brought a tear to my eye."
How could it not?
I think that's exactly right. All right, let's go here with Will Cain. A bunch of other things to get to. Earlier this morning, we have a variety of topics on the table for you. Mm-hmm. Kirk Herbstreit brought up with us, as we work our way through this college football season, that we might be headed towards real total chaos when we start getting to deciding on 4 teams to play for college football's championship. And Mike brought up the possibility of an unbeaten Alabama and unbeaten Georgia in the SEC championship game. What argument will the loser of that game have to get in? And I know you have a pretty strong feeling on one direction this thing may go.
Well, I think the loser of the SEC will have no chance of getting in. Let's just play this out, and it's awful early to start making these hypothetical scenarios, but Herb Street brought it up with you earlier, and I've been saying this for a couple weeks. If you assume that Alabama and Clemson take 2 of the 4 spots in a college football playoff, that leaves 2 more spots for 3 Power 5 conferences, Big 12, Big 10, Pac-12. And as you look at it, I think when Oklahoma beat Ohio State earlier this season and beat them convincingly, what they did is lift the perception of the Big 12 itself up high enough that the Pac-12 gets boxed out. If you assume they all have the same record, either undefeated or 1 loss, I don't see how you push out a Big 10, Penn State, or Michigan team from the playoff. And with Oklahoma being Ohio State, there's no way you push out Oklahoma either. That left, I think, USC out in the cold. And with USC losing, I don't see how Washington wins any debate. The real debate to have, I guess, would be this. What if Oklahoma loses and it's Washington versus TCU, if that's the debate? And I think the only thing you have to ask yourself at that point is, how much did Oklahoma lift the perception of the Big 12? How much do you value what's going on in the Big 12 versus the Pac-12? And I'm telling you, I still think the Pac-12 is left out in the cold.
You may be right, but can I throw one dispute into the hypothetical that you have given us?
Okay.
If Alabama, which has been number 1 in the country all year long, goes into the SEC championship game unbeaten and loses a close game to Georgia, and there aren't other unbeatens, if we are in a 1-loss situation with these other conference champs that you're talking about, do you not believe, Mike Goilc, that Alabama gets in?
Oh, I think they absolutely get in.
I think there'd be a real chance they get in.
Listen, I think where Georgia is going to be ranked by the time we get there, because I think they're both going to be undefeated going into the SEC game. So Georgia's going to be ranked up there, and I think even if they lost a close game, it would be a little tougher for them. If Alabama lost a close one, I think they'd be in. If Georgia lost a close one, it still has to go to what's going on in the other conferences
That's really
as well.
good,
I think for the Pac-10 or the Pac-12, listen, if USC ran the table, USC was going to be in this thing because everybody loved USC the way they finished last year. Nobody wanted to play USC. Sam Darnold's going to be a Jet, the first pick. If they played up to that and ran the table this year, there's no doubt in my mind they would have been in this thing, but they don't look like they looked last year. So I agree with you about the Pac-12 being iffy, and now that the Big 12 brought in a Big 12 championship game to get that extra game now to be seen, I think that could definitely help them. That's
a really good hypothetical, Greeny, and what I would tell you is I think Alabama would get left out. I do not think you can leave a Big 12, assumingly either undefeated or 1-loss Oklahoma that beat Ohio State out of the playoff. I just don't think you can. If Oklahoma loses, that changes everything. Maybe a non-conference champion Alabama could push out TCU. Maybe. TCU and Washington, for that matter. Because I think the Big Ten's getting in as well. Oklahoma and Big Ten are getting in.
Well, that's assuming that these teams wind up getting there with 0 losses.
Right. Yeah,
and we're supposing a lot of stuff, but that it never happens, right? So we've had this college football playoff 3 years, and each of the 3 years we've had a total of 1 undefeated in each of them.
Exactly.
So these teams, we can start projecting all we want. That's not going to happen.
Yes.
What's not going to happen here is you're going to wind up with 4 unbeaten teams at the end of it all. That's not going to happen. Somewhere along the line, these teams just lose. It always happens.
And I think the big takeaway is how valuable that Oklahoma win over Ohio State was.
Well, just like it helped Ohio State last year.
Yeah, it lifted the entire perception of the Big 12.
Yes, it did.
That win, to the contrary of the argument. So let me bounce this off you, Cain. So I said, when we were having this discussion before the season began, we had Herbie and Desmond Howard in here, and we were just sort of kicking around. This was before the year began. And we were kicking around the scheduling question. And I said, if I'm a big-time coach at one of these big-time programs in one of the power conferences, I'm scheduling doormats in my preseason because my best bet, the best way, the only sure way of getting in to play for the Final Four is by not losing a game. And once you've lost a game, you leave yourself much less margin for error. I understand it got Ohio State in last year, but bear in mind, they didn't lose. They could only afford to lose 1 game. Once if they lost another game, they would have been completely dead in that scenario. If you lose that game, you cannot afford. The other thing we've never had is we've never had a 2-loss team in this playoff. So once you lose 1 game, that's it. You have reached your quota of losses. So I would not be scheduling them, and I'd be taking my chances. If you were a coach, which would you do?
In a Power 5 conference.
Yeah.
You're saying there's never been an undefeated Power 5 conference champion left out, so you might as well schedule cupcakes because that's your clearest path into the playoffs.
Exactly.
Once you lose one game,
it never has been,
you're
and
in
it
the
never
debate
will be.
scenario.
There will never be an undefeated conference champion from one of the big conferences left out unless we have 5 of them.
Right.
I think you're right. I mean, that's the only true path. Once you receive that one loss, you're now in perception and debate stage, where you will need that good non-conference win.
So is there no one – I mean, is this fair to the Pac-12? I saw an interview Chris Peterson gave the coach of Washington in which he was talking about the starting times of their games and how they start them so late because of television scheduling. Their game starts so late that it hurts their perception, that so many of the people who watch this stuff don't see them play.
It should be zero excuse because we don't pick the Final Four.
It's just the people in the room.
13 people or 12 people that pick the final score. They can't use it as that's late. I kind of fell asleep and I haven't watched the tape yet. I mean, there's zero excuse for them to say they should be watching those teams just as much as any other team. So to me, no, that cannot be an excuse.
If you look at their schedule the rest of the way, Washington, which is, they're an unbeaten team and they're one of the teams that right now figure to be in the conversation. The starting times of only 3 of their remaining games are already set. The others are all to be determined. And those starting times are 10:45 p.m. Eastern, 10:45 p.m. Eastern, and 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Now, this is where they play. They don't play Eastern. So I understand they play when they play. In the old days, Mike, to your point, that probably hurt them more. It made a difference.
Oh, it definitely hurt them more when you were going on vote. But now there's no way it can hurt perception by the general public. But in the system that we have, there's no way it should hurt him. If we do, you got to get new people, picking the Final Four. If that at all is an issue, that can't be an issue. No chance.
I'm just reading his quote. I just want to say something to our fans. We apologize for these late games. I'd also like to reiterate it has nothing to do with us or the administration. We want to play at 1 p.m. It hurts us tremendously in terms of national exposure. No one wants to watch our game on the East Coast that late, and we all know it. We haven't had a kickoff before 5 p.m. this season, and so it's painful for our team, it's painful for our administration, and we know certainly the most important part is for our fans.
It can be difficult, again, for individuals. Luke Falk, the quarterback for Washington State, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Bryce Love, the running back for Stanford, who has more yards at this point than Christian McCaffrey did, but nobody knows about it because of him playing at the late time. Individuals, I can see them not getting the love, and again, perception by the public of those teams, but it doesn't matter in today's game the way they decide it.
As far as team voting, as far as
voting,
right.
Those 12, 13, are we down to 12 now? Did they lose the one? So it's just 12? I don't even know. But those people, there's, again, zero excuse for them to not have watched just as much Washington State, USC as Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, whoever.
I'm Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guest on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. All right, Will Cain, one more from you. I know that you watched with interest some of the events surrounding NFL star Michael Bennett and the issues that he had in Las Vegas. I guess now a month ago or several months ago was when the incident took place, and then the video that was released last week by the Las Vegas Police Department. And in the interim, of course, we had this horrible tragedy that took place in Las Vegas, and because of that, Mike and I did not mention this at all earlier in the week because it just didn't feel like the time. But now that a few days have passed, I know you had some thoughts on that you wanted to share.
I think that's a completely understandable call. It's one that Ryan Russillo and I made earlier this week, talking about this on Monday, even talking about somewhat after that is difficult in the wake of what happened in Las Vegas this past weekend. But I think responsibility compels us to revisit this story. It was about a month ago, Greeny. It was in the wake of the Mayweather-McGregor.
Oh, it was the fight. That's right. It was the night of the fight.
That Michael Bennett supposedly was, in his account, a victim of racial profiling and excessive use of force by the Las Vegas Police Department. He came out with his famous tweet entitled Equality, where he says he was taken down for nothing other than the color of his skin, for nothing other than being a black man in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Las Vegas police have now done their investigation. They released their videos on Friday. They released an edited form of 190 videos that showed something that does not mesh with what Michael Bennett claims to have experienced. He said 2 things. I think they're the most operative claims he made. This was racial profiling and was done for nothing more than the color of his skin, and that he was a victim of excessive force. Those videos show Michael Bennett crouching behind slot machines, moving through that casino, comparatively suspicious to the other people in that casino during an active shooter incident, supposed active shooter incident. Michael Bennett, from what the videos that have been released, and there are 190 of them, does not appear to be in any way a victim of racial profiling. There are numerous, if not hundreds, of African Americans in that casino. He was one of them. That does not make him any different than anyone else in that scenario. What did was his behavior. Now, there is a time period missing. It's
sure
the period,
is.
Well, it's the period of which he was supposedly taken down by the police officers. In that video, I will say this. There better be a lot to show in there to show excessive force and racial profiling. I don't know how it would support the claim of racial profiling. That one, to me, seems completely and utterly debunked.
I mean, listen, that's fine, but you can't go with the other statement of excessive force because you don't know.
No,
we don't know. I mean,
that's
that
exactly
video
right.
came out and everybody lost their mind, and I think anytime you can take a shot at an NFL player now, people are going to do it. Let's be honest. With what's going on in the NFL, people are really down on NFL players. So I think, Michael, show me the video where there was no excessive force. The Las Vegas police had all this video except of when he was taken down on the ground when he said the excessive force took place. Now, if you want to say he didn't was lying about the racial profiling, I can understand what you're saying there, or embellishing or lying, however far you want to go. That's fine. But you can't say for a fact sitting here that he was lying about excessive force because we don't know. All that video we saw, none of it was when he was taken down.
I would say two things. Number one, you're right, Goilc. And when this incident happened, I came out and said, we do not have the facts to build this entire narrative, that this is the illustration of everything Colin Kaepernick has talked about, that this is symbolic of the racial tension in this country between law enforcement and African Americans. I said, you do not have the facts. You cannot build debate shows, conversations, and symbols and illustrations of all of our problems on one incident.
Right.
And it was inappropriate by the media then, and I think it's inappropriate that it's so rarely being revisited now. Our job is singular. It is to tell the truth. It is not to build narratives. It's not to build conversations that we think are important. It is to tell the truth. And I think in this incident, we have not sufficiently pursued that fact. Regarding specifically the excessive force video, Goilc, you're right. There is a hole in the video. All I would say is we should have the same skepticism towards Michael Bennett's claim
that's fair.
that we should have had originally, because I'll tell you this, he suffered no injuries, and that was an extremely cordial interaction after the fact where he was detained for 7 minutes between him and police.
Right.
There better be a lot on that video to support the claims he made. He's the one making the claim.
Yes, he is.
He's
You're
the
right.
one making it.
You're right.
So there's also, by the way, a trend not just to attack NFL players, but to attack law enforcement. And I'm going to say this, no matter what your claim or your attack, you better be ready to support it.
No, I'm with you there. And the support about racial profiling from the video, I can absolutely understand what you're saying. And I think there may be people that say, well, if we feel he lied about that, then maybe we feel he's lying about what happened when he was cuffed and taken down as well. If people want to have that opinion, I understand that. My point is just what you said. Now we have video. Now we can start watching it and say, okay, well, if he said that, well, maybe that didn't really happen here. But the claim, but it was, wouldn't you say it was pretty interesting that there's a hole in that video? There is a hole in the video.
There's 190 videos of which they'd offered them up to Michael Bennett's attorney. If there's something in there that supports his claims, boy, the police have a lot of guts to put out a falsified video.
And I know we're late here, Grant. I understand it. But I also want to say about the Las Vegas police and what they were saying to Michael Bennett. Say, listen, dude, we had reports of an active shooter. We are taking. I get it. I mean, listen, after what went on, the horrific scene that went on in Las Vegas, you understand if that's what they think is going on, that they're going to be very, determined in what they do. So this isn't, I'm not saying this against the Las Vegas police either, just that there was that hole in that video.
I know that. We're all trying to be sensitive to this conversation.
Right.
Last really quick point, Greeny.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is so important. My indictment primarily is for the media, because here's the thing. I am someone that believes the society probably does have a problem that we need to visit about African Americans and law enforcement. But when you build a truth upon a lie, you undercut the truth. You cannot have a conversation about something that possibly did not happen. So the point is, if this is not true, what Michael Bennett claimed, it will undercut the entire issue, including those who are seeking change.
You're right about that.
The questions I would have really are mostly of a legal nature. And again, you are a lawyer by trade, or formerly were a lawyer. And so some of the questions I would have would be, if this was in a courtroom, and it is not in a courtroom, but the fact that those minutes of tape are missing, that they released all of this tape, and call it coincidentally or conveniently or whatever word you might attach to it if you wanted to sway the narrative, you would say, well, why are those minutes missing? Why are you not showing us this part that feels like the most important part? The two most important parts, as you point out, are A, why did they go after him in the first place? Right. And you've already described that.
Correctly.
The second is what happened when he's actually on the ground. Mm-hmm. And that part is, I'm going to put air quotes, conveniently missing. As a lawyer, wouldn't that be, if you were on the other side of this, wouldn't you be saying, hey, why are you showing us all this video and not showing showing us what should be the most important
Yes,
part.
I believe his claim of excessive use of force would be, it's important what happened in those minutes, and yes, I think we should see it. I think, and also, by the way, if there's 193 videos, I'd be surprised if it wasn't captured.
Right.
Okay, well, I'm going to push the read on this because we're so late. This is really good. Will, thanks as always. We do this every Wednesday with Will Cain. You'll see him on First Take. We'll do the read later. We'll take a quick break here. Back in a moment with more on Mike and Mike.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Swing and a ball ripped left field. Rosario back at the track, and it's gone! A line drive homer over the auxiliary scoreboard out there in left. Aaron Judge with his first postseason homer, and the Yankees have opened up a 7-4 lead.
The call right here on ESPN Radio, 8-4, the final. We've talked about it all morning long. Wild game in the wild card. Yanks win. They advance to play Cleveland in the divisional series. Rockies and Diamondbacks settle matters in the National League tonight. You'll hear the action right here on ESPN Radio starting at 7:30 Eastern. And Danny Trevathan, his suspension has been reduced by 1 game to 1 game for the hit last week on Devontae Adams. And SportsCenter with Mike and Mike is brought to you by 1-800-FLOWERS.
This weekend, win on the field and at home with amazing deals on bouquets from 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for $29.99, you're going to get an extra bouquet for free. Now, how awesome is that? Just go to 1-800-Flowers.com, click the radio icon, enter the code Mike.
It was a really interesting conversation that we just had with Will Cain, and there's a variety of different ways to look at the Michael Bennett situation. I heard Dan Lebitard talking about it yesterday. I heard what Will was talking about. And my interest is trying to cut through anybody's agenda, and as I guess Will was sort of saying, and just get to the truth, what actually did happen here. And I'm trying to put myself in the position of being a lawyer looking at this thing and saying the one thing that I would ask that would seem to me to be the obvious question is, if there is all of this footage, why would there not be footage of what would seem to be the most important part of the entire thing? That strikes me as an obvious question to ask. I haven't heard it answered yet. Perhaps it has been answered, and I'm not aware of the answer.
I don't think it has.
I haven't seen it in anything I've read.
No.
And that would strike me as being extremely important in all of this. If your goal is not to try and serve whatever your agenda may be, whichever side of that you are whichever narrative of that you're wishing to push, but if you are someone whose interest is solely in finding out what actually did happen here, that would be the big question I would have.
And you know what Will Cain brought up, the two things there where Michael Bennett said he was racially profiled and then the excessive force. Well, the racial profiling, as people watched that video, you saw other African Americans, running as well, and you did see him crouch down behind machines and then run out. And he was pointed out at that point of why is he running or running, and should we go after him? And they went after him. And so for those people, it looks like the claim, I think a lot of people would ask Michael Bennett, I'm sure he will be asked. You saw that video, how do you say you were racially profiled? Now, again, I wasn't there, and that was his claim, but that video, I would have to agree with Will. When you look at it and you see others in the area that wasn't racially, motivated, that they chased him. So, and there is, the video of the setup to that. As far as the excessive force, I mean, everybody on Twitter saying that Michael Bennett owes the Las Vegas police a complete apology and it was fraudulent and anybody that was agreeing with him is wrong. How does not everybody apologize? Well, as I said, I understand it to a point. We still don't have that video. I mean, there was a big deal made out of all the different angles that we had of the camera angles, a number of cameras, and we don't have that section. We don't have it. We don't have it when the supposed excessive force was used. So to assume that he was lying because you didn't believe him about being, racially profiled, that's a dangerous route to go down, don't you think? An avenue to go down to assume that when that's the only video that we don't see.
Yes, of course. If you're, again, I'll say it again, if you're not a person with an agenda in this and if your sole interest is in knowing what happened, then you would not be going into this with answers. You'd be going into it with questions. Where's the rest of that video? What does Michael Bennett say now that he sees that video, does it look different? Look, people are living their experiences in the moment that they're having them. So your perception of what is actually happening to you might not always be the same as someone else's perception of it is.
I'm just amazed. Like one of the first tweets from Matthew, lost all respect for you and ESPN. Bennett, proven liar. ESPN too afraid to call him out. Matthew, explain to me, again, as Greeny said, you have no stake in this, and you're shown that video. And you're going to call Michael Bennett a liar for excessive force being used when you have no video of it. The only video missing is that video when he got taken to the ground and whatever he had said supposedly happened. How am I backing him or not backing the police? I can't back anybody. I can't sit there and definitively say what happened when we see tape of everything else and not that. So, Matthew, feel free to tweet me back. You got me at ESPN Goilc. How do you explain that? You don't see that video. You see video of everything else right before that and right after that and not that. Yet you just want to sit there and call him a 100% liar for everything that went on when you don't have that video. That's what I'm having a hard time with. The racial profiling, listen, and he'll be asked about it. There's no doubt about it. And it certainly didn't look like racial profiling from the video. But then to take the leap of saying, well, if we think he lied about that, then he lied about everything, it's a big jump to make. So for those that want to rip and say, why don't you just call him out? I'm asking you, Matthew, tweet me. Where is that video? And if you don't see that video, how can you assume that he was just lying in that situation?
Yeah, I think that if there's one overriding point in all this that can be made is that maybe the best thing to do is to get all of the information before everyone starts screaming and yelling opinions. But we all understand that's not the way the world works anymore. People have a perspective, and they really are only looking for information that bolsters their side of it, whatever that may be. And so with that thought in mind, let's change the topic to this. I've got the rating from last night's baseball game. I think this is good. I don't know for sure. Last night's Twins-Yankee game did a 5.24 metered market average as compared to last year's American League game, which was on TBS. Baltimore-Toronto did a 3.3. Yep. So this is a 5.24. Now, this includes the Yankees, and, of course, the Yankees are just a very big draw, and Toronto is a Canadian team, so by nature you're not going to have as good a rating with them. The National League game last year, which was that was on ESPN. The American League game last year was on TBS. The National League game last year, I believe, was on ESPN, did a 5.75. So this was slightly lower than that. That included the Mets and Giants, which is another big TV market. Right. You know, bringing in the Bay Area there. That was the game that Bumgarner just dominated, right? Am I remembering that correctly? He pitched a magnificent game. Last night was a crazy kind of game. Either way, do we have a sense of whether this is considered to be a good rating? It sounds like a good rating.
Sounds like a good rating. I'll be interested overall in the postseason because last year, I know the Cubs are in the postseason, but my point is last year they were the favorites coming in, right? Sure. I mean, and they obviously took it all the way through to ending the 9 million year curse. So everybody was drawn into that. Even if you weren't, a baseball fan, you were drawn into that story. So what will be the headline this year? It's the Indians that are favored this year and the Dodgers that had an incredible run before, hitting that valley during the season. But it seems like those two, matching up to go head and head. Is it going to hold the interest, forgetting just baseball fans, because we know there's baseball fans, but when you're talking about bigger ratings, you're talking about grabbing the casual fan as well.
What hurts them a little, I think, is that Cleveland is no longer in the Believeland position, which is if LeBron and the Cavs had not won a title and the whole city was still waiting for its first championship in 60 years or whatever it had been, and LeBron had gotten close but not gotten there, and they had lost in extra innings of the seventh game last year, the whole country might be getting behind the city of Cleveland, but because they have their championship so recently, maybe it feels a little bit different. We'll see. Meanwhile,
news you didn't even know you needed or even want.
Well, if I was you, I'd do something about it.
These are Mike and Mike's Nerd Notes.
Well, I got Nerd Notes for you on the National League wildcard game tonight. It's Colorado at Arizona.
Nerd alert!
Diamondbacks were 52-29 at home this year. Second best record in the bigs. Colorado, meanwhile, was one game over 500 on the road, just the second time in their franchise history. They had a winning record away from Coors Field, but still advantage, of course, to the Diamondbacks, who will send Zach Greinke to the mound this year. He was 13-1 at home, second most home wins in Diamondbacks history. Only Randy Johnson with 14 ever had more.
Nerd alert!
Rockies pitcher John Gray had the third highest average fastball velocity among starting pitchers during the regular season. So here we go again with all that heat. Arizona led baseball in home runs and extra base hits against pitches thrown 95 miles an hour or faster.
That's a nice matchup right there.
So it's strength against strength.
Nerd alert!
What does everybody think? Arizona's favorite in the game. They're minus 160 at Westgate. 538.com gives the Diamondbacks a 59% chance to win. And for those of you who know our show well, you know that Goilc makes his sort of a second home in Arizona, and you guys love it there so much. I know it's eventually where you guys would like to live many, many years down the road. So have you adopted them at all as your second team? I mean, are you rooting for them in the National League based on that?
I kind of am. It'll be my second team behind Cleveland until I move to Arizona. Then I'll continue to split between the two of them. I would hope the Indians and the Diamondbacks meet in the World Series.
And if you want to, but you would root for the Indians.
I'd root for the Indians. Yes, I would.
If they were to match up there. Okay, so we'll see what happens. Again, we had I thought last night's game was really interesting. And it just goes to show you, baseball is the most psychological, I think, of all of the major sports, besides maybe golf, because of the amount of time. It's just that simple. Like yesterday, I was actually talking to Booger and Ryan Clark about this when they were saying, I know what Danny Trevathan is thinking. We were talking about that hit.
Right.
And I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like he's not thinking at all. Like, you don't have time to think. The reason you guys practice so much.
No, he's on a seek and destroy.
You're exactly right. You're just reacting and you're instinctually. But in golf and in baseball, there is all this time to think. So to me, the biggest factor in the game last night is not only the fact that the Yankees get out of that inning, second and third, one out, only down 3-0, but just as big as that is they didn't have to live an actual hour last night losing by 3 runs. They got those runs back, it felt like in a minute. And they got it back so fast that psychologically they never played that game from behind.
Right.
I mean, they barely played that game from behind.
No harm, no foul.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Oh man, this is starting out bad. Bottom of the first, we got it all back. Okay, we're good.
But so much has been made of the Yankees while they have the legendary interlocking NY that basically they're a bunch of kids who've never been in this situation before. So it's very different to play that game from, hey, we were behind. Not only that, but you've got the juice and the momentum. We were way behind, and look at us now. We're right back in this thing.
Right.
Versus, okay, now it's the 4th inning and we're still losing. Now it's the 5th inning and we're losing, and every at-bat starts to feel like life and death. So I think the psychology of last night's game is extremely interesting.
I completely agree. Getting that all back in that first inning and basically starting some square again. The guy that was really, getting hurt was in the clubhouse. And you had a guy in Chad Green who came in and just shut down the rest of that first inning, and you feel pretty confident in your bullpen, even though they had to throw way more than they're normally used to.
Okay, and we actually, Hembo gave us a pretty good little trivia question here, so pop that back up if you would. Sorry, English, struggling.
We'll try that.
Pop that back up if you would. What was the Yankees' last postseason series without any member of what we would describe as the Fab Five, meaning the core 4 plus Bernie Williams? What was the last postseason series they played in which none of those players, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettit, and Bernie Williams, what was the last postseason series they played without any of them? And in all honesty, I guess I would have thought about that. Your first inclination might have been to go back to 95, which was the first time they made the playoffs in that longest time. But that is not the answer. The actual answer is the 1981 World Series. You got to go all the way back to that. At least one of those players appeared on the roster in 34 consecutive postseason series from 95 to 2012.
How about that? And now from Derek Jeter, you hear him behind the mic with a big M on the mic.
Weird,
flag.
isn't it?
It is.
Look, if you want to be an owner, that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
They weren't going to sell the Bulls to Michael Jordan because he was their greatest player, and they weren't going to sell the Yankees to Derek Jeter because he was a beloved former Yankee. So now, he goes in another direction. And listen, if you read between the lines and the stuff he was saying yesterday, he's going to trade.
He's going to trade Stanton. It was interesting to hear him talk about rebuilding, retooling, patience and all that, and said he had been eyeing this for a while about owning a team and zeroed in on the Marlins. And the other interesting thing, I think the thing that you would have really liked was in his office, it was a very cool desk, and they had the hand sanitizer, like the full-on hand sanitizer thing right next to his desk.
Like the kind of thing you might see like in an airport on a stand.
Yeah, exactly. Coming back into an office or something like that. I mean, I just think that moves around the germs. I think they've got everybody faked out.
No, you could be
sanitizer.
more wrong. It kills a lot of
No, it doesn't.
If it does,
Just moves it around.
I'm not going to lie to you.
Moves it around.
My entire life has been a sham. If that's the case, if that stuff doesn't actually work, my entire life is just a sham.
Just moves around. That you have the same amount on your hands, just moving it around.
Everything I stand for becomes meaningless.
There you go.
If that is indeed the case. All right, so we got ourselves the best juncture of the entire sports year as we speak. You got your baseball playoffs. The second wild card game is tonight. Then we dive headlong into 3 games tomorrow. We got NFL action tomorrow night. We got good game tomorrow night, actually, right? With the Patriots and the Buccaneers, kicking off the NFL weekend. Right. And we got all the college football and everything else. So this is a wonderful time.
Oh, by the way, basketball preseason started and hockey starts tonight.
The NHL season starts tonight.
It's incredible.
The best time on the sports calendar. We're glad you're here to be along for the ride with us. And we are back and better than ever, same time, same place tomorrow. See you then, Mike and Mike.